The sun hung low over the dusty hills of rural Mexico, casting long shadows across the sprawling ranch that served as the heart of the Silver Moon Pack. Elena Vargas wiped the sweat from her brow, her calloused hands gripping the reins of the old mare she'd been tending all afternoon. At 24, she was the Pack's Omega, the lowest of the low, the one who mended fences, cared for the livestock, and faded into the background like the wild mesquite bushes that dotted the landscape. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical braid, and her simple cotton dress clung to her skin from the relentless heat. No one noticed her much, and that was how she preferred it, or so she told herself. The Pack's alpha, Marcus Ruiz, ruled from the grand hacienda at the ranch's center, a sprawling adobe structure with tiled roofs and wrought iron gates that screamed old money and ancient power. Marcus was everything an alpha should be, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like polished obsidian and a scar running down his jaw from a border skirmish years ago. He'd taken over the Pack 5 years back after his father vanished during a full moon raid. Poof, gone without a trace. Like so many others in these parts, whispers said it was rival packs from the north, or maybe cartel shifters meddling in wolf affairs. Elena didn't dwell on it. Disappearances were as common as tequila hangovers around here. The desert swallowed secrets whole. Eleanor led the mare into the stable, where Javier, the grizzled stable hand with a limp from an old injury and a perpetual squint from too many dusty sunrises, was stacking hay bales. "Another scorcher, eh, Chica?" Javier grunted, his voice rough as gravel. He was one of the few who treated her like a person, not just pack furniture. Elena smiled faintly, nodding as she unbuckled the saddle. Javier had been with the Pack since before Marcus's father led it, back when the lands stretched farther before human encroachment carved them up. As she brushed down the horse, a low rumble echoed from the hacienda, Marcus calling a meeting. The air thickened with the scent of impending shift, that earthy mix of pine and musk that meant Pack business. Eleanor's stomach twisted. She wasn't invited to those. Omegas stayed out of alpha politics. But lately, things felt off. Wolves had been vanishing. First a scout named Tomas, who patrolled the southern borders, then Maria, the healer with her gentle hands and knowledge of desert herbs. No bodies, no tracks, just empty dens and unanswered howls. The Pack was on edge, snapping at shadows, and Elena's quiet life was fraying at the edges. She finished her chores and slipped toward the edge of the gathering clearing, hidden behind a cluster of agave plants. From there, she could listen without being seen. Marcus stood on the raised porch, his voice booming like thunder over the parched earth. "We've lost 3 now. The shadows are closing in, rivals, hunters, who knows? But we can't run forever. We need strength. We need a Luna to bind us, to heal these wounds." A Luna. The word hung in the air, stirring murmurs among the gathered wolves. 50 strong, from burly enforcers like Diego, with his tattooed arms and quick temper, to the younger pups like little Sophia, who clung to her mother's skirt, wide-eyed. A Luna wasn't just an alpha's mate. She was the Pack's heart, the one who soothed the beasts within and forged unbreakable loyalties. Marcus had been without one since his brief union with Carla ended in her mysterious disappearance 2 years ago. Some said she'd run off with a human lover. Others whispered darker things like betrayal or a curse. Elena's heart pounded. She knew the stories, the old tales of Omegas rising, but they were just that. Stories. She was no Luna material. Weak in wolf form, her shifts were painful. Her senses dulled compared to the others, rejected by every potential match in the Pack, including Marcus himself during a moon festival 3 summers back. He'd laughed off her hopeful glance, choosing a beta instead. The memory burned, but she'd buried it deep, like the Pack's buried grudges. As the meeting broke, Marcus's gaze swept the crowd, lingering on the shadows where Eleanor hid. Had he sensed her? Alphas always did. She backed away, pulse racing, but before she could flee, a hand clamped on her shoulder. It was Luca, Marcus's beta and right-hand enforcer, a lean man in his 30s with a sly grin and eyes that missed nothing. Luca had a reputation for charm that bordered on cruelty, always testing boundaries with his sharp wit and sharper claws. Little Omega, eavesdropping again. Luca's voice was low, teasing, but there was an edge to it, like a blade wrapped in silk. He steered her toward the hacienda's side path, away from prying ears. The Alpha's got plans. Big ones. And you're still here, aren't you? Elena shrugged off his hand, chin lifting despite the fear coiling in her gut. Not my business, Luca. I mend what's broken. I don't make the rules. He chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Everything's your business if the pack falls. Marcus is talking alliances. A new Luna from outside. Maybe that coyote pack up north. But whispers say we need fresh blood from within first. Someone overlooked. Her steps faltered. Overlooked. The word twisted like a knife. Was this a game? Luca had always toyed with her, dropping hints of what-ifs to watch her squirm. But tonight, with the disappearances looming like storm clouds, it felt heavier. They reached the hacienda's garden, where bougainvillea climbed the walls in vibrant pinks and reds, a deceptive beauty against the tension. Marcus emerged from the porch, his presence filling the space like the Alpha he was. He nodded to Luca, who melted back into the shadows with a wink at Elena. Alone now, or as alone as one could be under an Alpha's stare, Marcus crossed his arms, his shirt straining against his muscled frame. "Elena," he said, her name rolling off his tongue like a command. She froze, the desert wind whispering through the leaves. "You've been with us longest, seen the changes, the losses." She swallowed, meeting his gaze for the first time in years. Up close, he smelled of sage and strength, a reminder of what she'd never have. "Yes, Alpha, I've seen." He stepped closer, voice dropping to a rumble that vibrated through her bones. "The pack's fracturing. We need unity. You need a pack that sees you, not just an Omega, but part of the whole. And my wolves, they need a Luna. Someone who understands the quiet strength, the hidden fire." Her breath caught. Was this pity? A trick? The rejected Omega, suddenly in the Alpha's sights? But his eyes held no mockery, only a raw urgency that mirrored the pack's desperation. Elena's mind raced, visions of the disappeared, the empty spaces they'd left, the fear that clawed at her own dreams. What if this was her chance, or her end? She started, but the words tangled. The moon crested the horizon, pulling at her wolf, urging a choice that could shatter everything. Before she could answer, a distant howl pierced the night. Not pack, but something feral, warning. Marcus tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for her arm. The shadows deepened, and Elena wondered if the disappearances were just the beginning. What secrets did the desert hold, and what price would she pay to uncover them? In that moment, as the howl faded into silence, Eleanor felt the first spark of something dangerous, possibility, but possibility in a world of wolves often came with teeth. The distant howl lingered in the air like a ghost's unfinished cry, sharp and unnatural against the night's velvet hush. Marcus's grip on Elena's arm tightened, not rough but firm, like an anchor in a storm. His eyes, dark as the encroaching shadows, scanned the horizon where the hills met the star-pricked sky. The garden around them, with its riot of bougainvillea and the faint trickle of a stone fountain, suddenly felt too exposed, too fragile. Elena's skin prickled, her wolf stirring uneasily beneath her skin, urging her to shift, to run. But she stood her ground, heart hammering as the Alpha's presence loomed beside her. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice barely cutting through the tension. It wasn't a pack howl. She knew their calls like her own breath. familiar rhythms of territory and kin. This one carried an edge of desperation, laced with something foreign, like the scent of damp earth from distant rains that never reached their parched lands. Marcus released her arm but didn't step back. "Trouble!" he said simply, his jaw set in that unyielding line she'd seen 100 times from afar. He tilted his head, listening, the muscles in his neck cordoning like a predator on alert. Not ours, but close. Luca. His beta materialized from the gloom almost instantly, his sly grin replaced by a hunter's focus. "Rally the enforcers. Double the patrols. Tell Diego to take the South Ridge. No one sleeps tonight." Luca nodded, his eyes flicking to Elena with a mix of curiosity and warning before he vanished into the night, his footsteps silent on the gravel path. The hacienda's lights flickered on one by one, spilling golden pools across the yard as wolves stirred from their dens. Sophia's mother, Rosa, a sturdy woman with laugh lines etched deep from years of chasing pups, peeked from a window, her face pale. Javier hobbled out from the stables, pitchfork in hand like a makeshift spear, muttering curses under his breath about cursed moons and vanishing shadows. Elena felt the weight of it all pressing down, the pack's fragile unity cracking under the strain. Just hours ago, she'd been brushing down a horse, invisible as dust. Now, here she was, at the Alpha's side, his words echoing in her mind. A Luna, a chance. But possibility tasted like ash when fear clawed at the edges. "Alpha, if this is about the disappearances," she trailed off, glancing toward the dark expanse beyond the garden fence, where the desert stretched like an endless, whispering void. Marcus turned to her fully, his expression softening just a fraction. The first crack in his armored facade she'd ever witnessed up close. "It is. Thomas, Maria, and now, whatever that was. The desert's been hungry lately, Elena, swallowing our own without a trace. Scouts found Maria's herb pouch by the arroyo last week, torn and empty. No blood, no struggle, just gone." His voice roughened, a rare vulnerability slipping through. He wasn't just the Alpha. He was a man haunted by ghosts, the same ones that had claimed his father and Carla. Elena wondered if that's what drove him to this, to pull her from the shadows, to gamble on an Omega's hidden fire. She swallowed hard, memories flooding back unbidden. Maria had been kind to her once, sharing poultices for her aching shifts when no one else cared. Tomas had nodded to her during patrols, a silent respect from a warrior to the quiet one who kept the home fires burning. Their absences left holes in the pack, echoes in the daily rhythms, and now this howl, it felt like a summons, pulling at the frayed threads of her resolve. What if it's not rivals? What if it's something worse? The old stories talk of spirits in the canyons, things that lure wolves away. He shook his head, but there was doubt in his eyes, the kind that alphas rarely admitted. Stories keep pups in line, but we face real threats. Cartels pushing south, humans with guns who don't know the difference between coyote and wolf. Or maybe it's internal, a traitor feeding info to outsiders. His gaze bore into hers, searching. "That's why we need strength, Elena. A Luna isn't just a mate, she's the glue. You've seen the fractures, the enforcers bickering, the pups scared. If you say yes, it changes everything. We build from within." Her pulse thundered, a war between fear and that treacherous spark of hope. Rejected once, now offered the moon itself. It reeked of desperation, yet his scent, sage and storm, wrapped around her like a promise. Before she could form a response, shouts erupted from the clearing. Diego barreled toward them, his tattooed arms pumping, face slick with sweat despite the cooling night. "Alpha, tracks by the old well, fresh, not ours. Smells like the vanished ones. Faint, but there." Marcus's face hardened, the Lunatalk shoved aside like a loaded rifle for later. "Show me." He glanced at Elena, a silent command in his nod. "Stay close. This isn't a chore for Omegas tonight." She followed without protest, her bare feet padding over the warm earth as they hurried toward the well, a crumbling stone relic on the ranch's edge, half swallowed by mesquite and legend. The air grew thicker here, heavy with the tang of sagebrush and something metallic, like old blood. Javier trailed behind, his limp more pronounced in the haste, grumbling about fool wolves chasing ghosts. Rosa gathered the pups inside, her voice a soothing murmur against the rising panic. At the well, Diego knelt by a cluster of paw prints in the dust, large, clawed, but distorted, as if the wolf had been dragging something heavy, or been dragged. Eleanor crouched beside them, her dulled senses straining. There, a whiff of Maria's herbs, faint as a memory, mingled with the acrid bite of fear sweat. Her stomach churned. "It's them," she breathed, surprising even herself. "Or what's left." Marcus's hand brushed her shoulder, a fleeting touch that sent warmth racing through her veins. "Your nose catches what mine misses in the chaos. See? Hidden fire." But his praise was cut short by another howl, this one closer, ragged, echoing off the canyon walls like a plea. The pack converged, Luca with a handful of enforcers, their eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight, Sophia peeking from afar, her small face a mask of wide-eyed wonder and terror. Tension coiled like a spring, every wolf on edge, fur rippling under skin. Elena felt it too, her own shift bubbling up, painful but insistent. What if this was the key to the disappearances, a lure, a trap, and what role did she play in unraveling it? As the group fanned out, Marcus pulled her aside, his voice low and urgent. "Think on it, Elena. The pack needs you, not as the overlooked one, but as the Luna who sees the shadows first. Say the word, and we face this together." She met his gaze, the desert wind whipping her braid, carrying whispers of the lost. The howl came again, closer still, and in that moment Elena realized her answer wasn't just about him or the pack. It was about claiming the fire she'd buried for years. But as shadows shifted unnaturally around the well, she wondered if it was already too late. The desert didn't give back what it took easily, and tonight it seemed hungrier than ever. The shadows around the old well twisted like living things under the rising moon, the air thick with the scent of dry earth and something sharper, decay perhaps, or the metallic tang of spilled secrets. Elena's breath came in shallow bursts as she stared at the paw prints, her fingers digging into the dusty soil. They weren't just tracks, they were a story etched in the dirt, one of struggle and vanishing. Marcus stood beside her, his broad frame a wall against the night, but even he couldn't hide the flicker of unease in his eyes. The pack fanned out, enforcers like Diego sniffing the air with low growls, their forms half-shifted, claws glinting in the moonlight. Luca circled the well's crumbling edge, his lean body coiled like a spring. "These prints loop back toward the canyon mouth," he said, his voice a low drawl that cut through the tension. "Not a clean escape. Looks like they were herded, pushed, not chased." He shot Elena a glance, his usual slyness sharpened by the moment. "What do you smell, Omega? Don't hold back now." She hesitated, then leaned closer, ignoring the ache in her knees from the hard ground. Her senses weren't sharp like theirs, but tonight they hummed with an unfamiliar clarity, as if Marcus's words had unlocked something dormant. There it was again, Maria's herbs, crushed lavender and bitter root, mixed with the musky fear of a cornered wolf, and underneath a new note, salt and sweat, human. No, something wilder, like the feral edge of a rogue shifter from the borderlands. "It's recent," she murmured, her voice steadier than she felt. "Less than an hour. And it's not just one. Multiple scents overlapping like a group." Diego snorted, his tattooed arms flexing as he rose. "Group? We're talking about our missing, not some damn party. If it's rogues, I'll rip their throats myself." He was all bluster, the pack's hothead with a scar across his knuckles from too many bar fights in the nearby town of Nogales. But tonight, his bravado rang hollow. The enforcers murmured agreement, their eyes darting to the canyon's jagged silhouette, where wind whistled through the rocks like mocking laughter. Marcus raised a hand, silencing them. Enough. We track, not charge blind. Elena, Javier, stay with the well, guard it. His gaze lingered on her, heavy with unspoken expectation. The lunar talk hung between them like a challenge, but the howl's echo drowned it out. Javier nodded gruffly, leaning on his pitchfork, his weathered face creased with worry lines that spoke of decades watching the desert claim its toll. Aye, Alpha, but if it's spirits, no amount of steel'll help. As the Alpha led the enforcers into the darkness, their forms melting into the night with predatory grace, Elena felt the isolation settle like a shroud. The well loomed beside her, its mouth a black void that seemed to breathe, pulling at her wolf with an insistent tug. Javier paced nearby, muttering in Spanish about malditas sombras and the old days when the pack's borders were ironclad. Seen too many go like this, chica, he said, pausing to spit into the dust. Tomas was a good scout, taught my boy to track before he... Well, you know, this ain't natural. Elena nodded, wrapping her arms around herself against the chill that crept in despite the lingering heat. The garden's bougainvillea seemed miles away now, its colors faded to ghosts in the moonlight. She thought of Rosa back at the hacienda, probably herding Sophia and the other pups into the cellar, with tales of brave alphas to mask the fear. The pack's heart was beating too fast, fractures widening with every disappearance. And her, she was the overlooked thread, the one Marcus now pinned his hopes on. The idea twisted in her gut. Hope or desperation? She'd spent years mending what others broke, invisible and safe. Becoming Luna meant stepping into the light, teeth bared. A rustle in the mesquite snapped her from her thoughts. Javier whirled, pitchfork raised, but it was only a jackrabbit bolting into the underbrush with a flash of white tail. She exhaled, but the tension didn't ease. Her mind raced back to the meeting, Marcus's rumble of a voice offering her a place at his side. You need a pack that sees you, he'd said. But did she want it? The rejection from years ago still stung, a public dismissal under the full moon's glare. He'd chosen a beta then, someone strong and seen. Now, with the pack crumbling, was she just a convenient fix? The distant snarls of the search party echoed back, muffled by the canyon walls, clashes of fur and fang, too chaotic for words. Elena's wolf clawed at her insides, the shift painful as always, bones grinding like stones in a riverbed. She fought it down, focusing on the well instead. Peering over the edge, she saw nothing but inky depths, but a faint glint caught her eye, a shred of fabric snagged on the stones, pale blue like the scarf Maria always wore. Heart pounding, she reached for it, fingers brushing the rough edge. That's when the ground trembled. Not an earthquake. The desert had those aplenty, but a deliberate vibration, like heavy paws pounding earth. Javier cursed, dropping low. Incoming! From the shadows beyond the well, shapes emerged, 3 wolves, ragged and limping, eyes wild with terror. Not pack. Their fur matted, scents foreign, coyote shifters from the north, allies turned desperate refugees. The led one, a scarred female with a missing ear, collapsed at Elena's feet, wheezing. Help! Trapped! She gasped, shifting partially to human form, her voice hoarse from disuse. They took the others, nets, drugs, in the caves, not wolves, men with machines. Her eyes rolled back, foam at her lips. Poison! Elena knelt, instinct overriding fear, pressing her hands to the wolf's flank. Javier hovered, weapon ready, but the other 2 coyotes snarled warnings, circling protectively. Before Elena could process, the snarls from the canyon intensified, a full skirmish. Marcus burst from the gloom first, blood streaking his muzzle, Luca and Diego flanking him with fresh wounds. "Ambush!" Marcus roared, shifting mid-stride to human, his chest heaving. He spotted the coyotes and tensed, but Elena's voice cut through. "Wait! They're victims, not attackers." She said men with machines, in the caves. The Alpha's eyes met hers, a storm of calculation and something warmer, trust perhaps, blooming in the chaos. The coyote female seized, her body arching before going limp. Luca knelt to check her, his face grim. "Drugged, all right? Same as what we found on Thomas's trail. Tranks, human make." The pack closed in, a circle of wary forms under the moon's judgmental glow. Sophia's distant cry carried from the hacienda, a reminder of what was at stake. Elena stood, the blue scrap clutched in her fist, the weight of it heavier than stone. This wasn't just disappearances, it was invasion, humans hunting shifters, perhaps tied to the cartels that prowled the borders, seeking pelts or power or worse. Marcus stepped forward, his hand finding her shoulder again, steadying. "You heard her right. Caves mean the old mine shafts, abandoned but perfect for hiding ops." His voice dropped for her ears only. "This changes the game, Elena. We need every edge. Your call. Join the fight as one of us, or stay in the shadows." She looked at the fallen coyote, then at the pack's expectant faces, Javier's nod of quiet support, Diego's reluctant respect. The howl that started it all seemed like a lifetime ago, but the desert's hunger was clear now. It wasn't spirits, but something colder, more calculated. Elena's fire, buried so long, flickered brighter. "I'm in," she said, the words tasting like freedom and fangs. But as the group mobilized toward the caves, a low engine rumble echoed from the distance, headlights piercing the night like predator eyes. The real hunt was just beginning, and Elena wondered if her answer had sealed their fates or saved them all. The engine's growl sliced through the night like a chainsaw through mesquite, low and mechanical, drowning out the pack's urgent whispers. Headlights stabbed the darkness from the canyon's mouth, twin beams bouncing over rutted dirt as a battered pickup truck barreled toward the ranch's edge. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs, the blue scrap of Maria's scarf still clenched in her fist like a talisman. The coyote shifters, the two survivors now huddled together, fur bristling, snarled in unison, their eyes reflecting the approaching lights with feral hatred. Javier gripped his pitchfork tighter, his limp forgotten in the adrenaline surge, while Diego cracked his knuckles, a grin splitting his scarred face, despite the blood still trickling from a gash on his arm. Marcus moved like lightning, shoving Elena behind him with one hand, while barking orders. Luca, flank left with the enforcers, cut off their escape. Diego, right side, no mercy if they fire first. Javier, get those coyotes to the hacienda. Rosa will know what to do. His voice was steel, but Elena caught the undercurrent of rage, the Alpha's wolf barely leashed. He turned to her then, his obsidian eyes locking onto hers in the chaos. "Stay low, Elena. This is human stink, poachers or worse. But if you shift, do it smart. Your fire's no joke tonight." She nodded, the weight of his trust igniting something fierce in her chest. No time for doubts. The truck skidded to a halt 20 yards out, dust billowing like a shroud. Two men piled out, rough types in faded flannels and boots caked with canyon mud. Border smugglers, maybe, or cartel runners moonlighting as hunters. The driver, a stocky guy with a bushy mustache and a rifle slung over his shoulder, scanned the group with narrowed eyes. His partner, younger and twitchier, clutched a trank gun, the kind that felled wolves without a sound. "Oigan, we ain't here for trouble," the driver called in accented Spanish, his tone oily. "Just passing through. Heard some howls. Thought it was strays." Luca emerged from the shadows on the left, his form half-shifted, claws extended, and lips peeled back in a silent snarl. The men froze, the air thickening with the pack's collective musk. pine, sweat, and barely contained fury. Diego mirrored him on the right, a low rumble building in his throat. The coyotes whimpered but held their ground, one of them shifting enough to bare teeth at the humans. Elena crouched behind a boulder, her wolf surging forward, the familiar pain twisting her limbs like barbed wire. She fought it at first, but Marcus's words echoed, "Your fire." With a gasp, she let it come, bones popping and fur sprouting in a rush that left her dizzy but whole. For once, the shift felt less like punishment and more like release, her omega form sleek and silver-grey, senses sharpening to catch the men's fear sweat, acrid and telling. The driver raised his hand slowly, but his eyes darted to the truck's bed, where Eleanor spotted crates stacked haphazardly, nets, vials of glowing liquid, and what looked like pelts bundled in plastic. "Easy, Lobos, we're just traders. Got some goods from the north. No poaching here." Lies hung off him like smoke. But before Marcus could respond, the younger man panicked, swinging his tranq gun toward Luca. The dart flew wide, embedding in the dirt, but it was enough. Chaos erupted. Marcus lunged, shifting mid-air into a massive black wolf, his jaws clamping onto the driver's rifle and wrenching it free with a crack of splintered wood. Diego charged the younger man, tackling him to the ground in a blur of tattooed fury and snapping fangs. Luca darted in, disarming the tranq gun with precise swipes, his movements a deadly dance, honed from years as beta. Gunfire cracked, the driver pulling a hidden pistol, but Javier, bless his stubborn soul, hurled his pitchfork like a javelin, pinning the man's sleeve to the truck door. The coyotes joined the fray, one leaping onto the truck's hood with a guttural bark, slashing at the windshield until it spider-webbed. Elena didn't hang back. Her smaller frame wove through the melee, instincts guiding her to the crates. She tore at the bindings with her teeth, revealing more horrors. Collars embedded with trackers, syringes labeled in English, experimental drugs perhaps to control shifters for the black market. One crate held a live rabbit, trembling and sedated, bait for luring wolves. Rage boiled in her veins, hotter than any rejection's sting. This was why Tomas vanished, why Maria's herbs lay scattered, humans treating her kind like trophies, dissecting the pack's soul for profit. She shredded a net, her growls mingling with the scuffle, until a stray bullet whizzed past her ear, embedding in the boulder. "Enough!" Marcus's command boomed, shifting back to human as he pinned the driver face down, knee in his back. The man wheezed, all bluster gone. The younger one lay unconscious under Diego's boot, Luca binding his wrists with zip ties from the truck itself. The coyotes panted, one of them nosing Elena's flank in silent thanks before limping toward the hacienda, Javier hobbling after with a triumphant grunt. "Told ya, chica. Desert don't forgive fools." Marcus hauled the driver up, his face inches from the man's. "Who sent you? The cartels? Or some gringo collector paying top dollar for wolf hides?" The driver spat blood, smirking through swollen lips. "You think this is small? Bigger than you, Alpha. The mines are just the start. Labs, buyers lining up from Tijuana to Texas. You're missing samples, and more coming." Eleanor's hackles rose, the words hitting like claws. Samples, not just gone, but taken, experimented on. She shifted back, ignoring the residual ache, and stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor. "Where are they? The caves? Which ones?" The man laughed, a wet, mocking sound, until Marcus twisted his arm, eliciting a yelp. "Old Silver Mine, East Ridge. But you go there, you don't come back. They got guards, lights, the works." The Alpha released him with a shove, signaling Luca to secure both prisoners in the truck's cab, engines disabled. The pack regrouped, adrenaline fading into grim resolve. Sophia's voice carried faintly from the hacienda, a relieved sob as Rosa called her name, reminding Elena of the innocence at stake. Diego wiped blood from his mouth, clapping Elena on the shoulder with surprising gentleness. Not bad for an Omega. Saved my ass dodging that dart. She met Marcus's gaze across the dust, his chest still heaving, a fresh cut above his eye. Pride flickered there, mingled with something deeper, warmer, a bond forming in the fire of battle. "You fought like a Luna tonight," he said quietly, as the others dragged the captives away. "No more hiding. We hit the mines at dawn. Together." Eleanor nodded, the scrap of scarf now tucked into her pocket like a vow. The desert wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of rain from afar, but the real storm brewed in the canyons ahead. The disappearances weren't random. They were a harvest, and her pack was next. As the group dispersed toward the hacienda, lights flickering like wary eyes, she felt the shift in herself, not just Omega, but warrior, potential heart of the pack. But dawn brought risks, and with humans involved, teeth alone might not be enough. What secrets waited in those mines, and could she truly bind the fractures before the desert claimed them all? The engine's echo faded, but the rumble in her soul only grew. The first hints of dawn painted the eastern sky in bruised purples and golds, but the hacienda's courtyard buzzed with the restless energy of a pack denied sleep. Elena leaned against the rough adobe wall, her muscles aching from the night's skirmish. The blue scrap of Maria's scarf, a constant weight in her pocket. The air carried the sharp bite of coffee brewing inside, mixed with the earthy tang of fur and blood that no amount of scrubbing could erase. Javier had already shuffled off to the stables, his limp more pronounced now, muttering about brewing a poultice for the coyote's wounds, while Rosa tended to them in the kitchen. The two survivors now shifted to human forms, a wiry man named Raul with a jagged scar across his chest, and his sister Lena, whose missing ear gave her a fierce, lopsided look, huddled by the fire pit, sharing halting stories of their clan's decimation. "They came at night," Raul rasped, his voice thick with exhaustion. "Trucks like the one you took, nets that burn the skin, needles that steal your shift. Our Alpha, gone first." Elena's stomach twisted, empathy pulling at her like the moon's tide. She'd always been the listener, the one who patched wounds without questions. But this felt personal now, the vanishings bleeding into her world, turning whispers into war cries. Across the courtyard, Marcus paced, his broad shoulders tense under a fresh shirt that couldn't hide the bruises blooming like storm clouds. Luca flanked him, binding the captured human's hands tighter with rope from the barn, while Diego stood guard, rifle pilfered from the truck slung over his shoulder. The prisoners sat slumped against the hacienda's wall, the mustached driver, now revealed as Paco, a low-level smuggler from Nogales, nursing a split lip. His younger partner, Tomas, no relation to the lost scout, thank the spirits, stared at the ground, shivering despite the warming air. "You talk more, or we make you," Marcus growled, stopping inches from Paco. The Alpha's presence filled the space, a magnetic pull that made even the wind seem to hush. Elena watched from the shadows, her braid loose now, strands sticking to her sweat-damp neck. Part of her wanted to retreat to the stables, to the familiar rhythm of chores, but the fire Marcus had ignited refused to dim. She'd fought last night, clawed at crates, dodged bullets, and the pack had seen it. Sophia, peeking from the doorway with wide eyes, had even whispered brave when Eleanor passed earlier, a small victory that warmed her more than the rising sun. Paco spat into the dust, his bravado cracking under the Alpha's stare. "I told you, man, the mine's rigged. Cameras, armed guards, boss is some American with deep pockets, wants live ones for experiments. Says shifters fetch more than drugs these days." His eyes flicked to Eleanor, lingering a beat too long, and she suppressed a shiver. Experiments. The word conjured images of cold labs, chains, the lost ones poked and prodded like lab rats. Maria's gentle hands, Thomas's steady gaze, reduced to samples. Luca leaned in, his sly grin feral. "Names, routes, how many guards?" He twisted Paco's collar, eliciting a wheeze. The beta had a way of extracting truths, his charm turning to venom when the pack was threatened. Tomas, the twitchy one, broke first, his voice a stammer. Five, maybe. They rotate shifts. Back entrance through the dry riverbed, hidden. But we know it, please. We didn't want this, just hauling for cash. Marcus straightened, his jaw working as he processed. The courtyard fell silent, save for the distant low of cattle stirring in the pens. Elena stepped forward unbidden, her bare feet silent on the packed earth. All eyes turned to her, the overlooked Omega now at the center. "The riverbed," she said, voice steady, drawing on memories of childhood explorations with her late mother, who knew every hidden path in these hills. "It forks at the old oak. If they're using it, they'll have tripwires, but there's a ledge above, overlooks the entrance. We could scout from there without being seen." Diego barked a laugh, but it held respect. Omega's got a point, better than charging blind like idiots. Javier, emerging from the stables with a bucket of water for the coyotes, nodded gruffly. "Smart, chica. Your ma taught you well, knew those canyons like her own veins." Marcus's gaze met hers, a spark of approval flashing like sunlight on obsidian. "Then that's our inn. Luca, you and Diego take the prisoners to the root cellar. Question them deeper. Rosa, keep the pups locked down. No one's leaving the hacienda till we return." He turned to Raúl and Lena, the coyotes rising shakily. "You two with us? Allies or not, we end this together." Raúl exchanged a look with his sister, then nodded, his scarred chest heaving. "For our lost. See." Lena's eyes, sharp despite the pain, fixed on Elena. "You lead the scout. Brave for an Omega." "Not any more," Elena murmured, the words surprising her as much as them. The pack mobilized in a flurry, enforcers grabbing packs of water, knives and trank darts reversed for their own use. Sophia ran up, thrusting a small stone talisman into Elena's hand, her tiny fingers warm. "For luck, like Mama says." Elena knelt, ruffling the girl's hair, the simple act grounding her amid the storm. As they slipped out the gates, the sun cresting fully now, casting the desert in golden fire, Marcus fell into step beside her. The group moved low and silent, a shadow across the hills. Marcus, Eleanor, Luca, Diego, and the two coyotes, with Javier waving them off from the fence, his squint deeper with worry. The air hummed with sage and anticipation, the canyon's mouth yawning ahead like a predator's maw. Elena's wolf paced within, eager but wary, her senses alive to every rustle of lizard or whisper of wind. They reached the dry riverbed undetected, the old oak's gnarled branches a landmark etched in Elena's soul. Climbing the ledge was treacherous, loose shale skittering under boots, the drop sheer and unforgiving. But she led, fingers finding holds her pack brothers missed. From above, the mine entrance came into view, a rusted grate half buried in talus, guarded by two men in fatigues, smoking and laughing over a radio crackling with static. Crates like the ones from the truck dotted the area, and deeper in, faint whimpers echoed. Wolves, humans, the lost. Luca's breath was hot on her neck. "3 more inside from the shadows. We hit fast. Take the guards quiet." Marcus nodded, but his hand brushed Elena's arm, a silent anchor. "Your call on the timing. Luna's instinct." The word sent a thrill through her, mingled with terror. Below, one guard checked his watch, oblivious. Elena's mind raced. Cause the distraction, consequence the assault, conflict the unknowns within. Resolution, saving her pack, claiming her place. "Now," she whispered. They descended like avenging spirits, silent until the clash. Luca's knife flashing, Diego's bulk tackling the second guard into silence. The coyotes flanked, claws out, while Marcus and Elena breached the grate, the darkness swallowing them whole. Inside, the air reeked of rust and despair, lanterns flickering on cells crammed with cages. There, Maria, gaunt but alive, her eyes widening in shock. And Thomas, chained nearby, murmuring weakly. But as alarms blared, footsteps thundering from the depths, Elena realized the mine held more than prisoners. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman sleek and human, with a lab coat stained in red and a syringe glinting in her hand. "Welcome to the harvest," she sneered, her accent clipped, American. The real threat wasn't the guards, it was her, the architect of the vanishings. Elena's growl built, the pack converging behind her, but the woman's laugh echoed off the walls. "You think you've won? This is just the vein we've tapped." As she lunged, needle aimed at Marcus, Elena intercepted, the fire within erupting into full fury. The fight spilled into chaos, but in that instant she knew her answer had changed everything, binding them in blood and unbreakable will. Yet the desert's secrets ran deeper, and dawn's light barely pierced the growing dark. The chaos in the mine shaft exploded like a powder keg, the air thick with the metallic reek of rust, sweat, and the chemical bite of whatever horrors the lab held. Elena's intercept was instinct, her body slamming into the woman's side with a force that surprised even her, Omega no more, but a silver streak of fury. The syringe clattered against the stone floor, its contents hissing as they met the damp earth, a sickly green that made Elena's fur bristle. The woman, Dr. Harlan, as a name tag glinted under the lantern light, stumbled back, her lab coat ripping at the seam, revealing tactical gear beneath. She wasn't just a scientist, she was armed, a pistol whipping from a hidden holster, her eyes cold as the desert night despite the frenzy. Marcus roared, shifting fully in a blur of black fur and muscle, his jaws snapping inches from Harlan's arm. "Elena, back!" But she didn't retreat. The sight of Maria, her once vibrant healer now skeletal and chained to a rusted pipe, fueled her. Maria's eyes, hazy from drugs, locked onto Elena's with a flicker of recognition, a silent plea that twisted like a knife. Thomas groaned nearby, his scout's frame battered, bruises blooming across his bare chest where they'd stripped him for examination, as a nearby chart crudely labeled. Luca and Diego burst through the grate behind them, enforcers in tow, the coyotes Raul and Lena weaving through with feral snarls. Gunfire cracked, Harlan's pistol barking twice, one bullet ricocheting off the wall and grazing Diego's shoulder. He howled, more rage than pain, charging forward to tackle a guard, emerging from a side tunnel, the man's fatigues marked with cartel insignia. "Malditos perros!" The guard spat, fumbling for his rifle, but Diego's claws raked deep, silencing him in a spray of red that painted the cage bars. Elena dodged a swinging baton from another guard, her smaller wolf form agile in the cramped space, slipping under his legs to sink teeth into his calf. He yelped, dropping, and she released just as Luca finished him with a precise slash. The beta's eyes met hers amid the din, a nod of grim respect flashing before he pivoted to free Thomas, his knife sawing through chains. "Hang on, Scout! Pack's here!" Raul and Lena targeted the cells, their coyote agility perfect for prying locks, Lena's lopsided ferocity shining as she freed a third captive, a young wolf from a neighboring pack, trembling but alive. Harlan backed toward a deeper chamber, her composure cracking as Marcus circled her, his growls echoing off the low ceiling. "You think this ends it? The network's vast, collectors from LA to Mexico City, your kind's valuable, pelts, blood, abilities." She fired again, the shot wild, but it clipped Marcus's flank, drawing a snarl of pain. Elena's heart lurched. She shifted mid-leap to human, snatching a fallen trank gun from the floor. Her hands shook, but she aimed true, the dart embedding in Harlan's thigh. The woman staggered, eyes widening in fury. "You insignificant mutt." The Alpha lunged, pinning her against a console flickering with monitors, feeds from hidden cameras showing more trucks en route, reinforcements. Marcus shifted back enough to speak, his voice a thunderous rumble. Where's the antidote? For the drugs, the poisons? Harlan laughed, a bitter sound cut short as the trank took hold, her body slumping, but her words lingered like venom. Safe in the lab, deeper in, but guards. Alarms triggered. Alarms wailed now. Red lights pulsing like a heartbeat, drawing footsteps from the tunnels. More men, armed and shouting in a mix of Spanish and English. Diego, bloodied but unbowed, hauled Maria over his shoulder, her weak protests ignored. "We got you, healer. Time to go home." Thomas leaned on Luca, the scout's face ashen, but his grip firm on a pilfered knife. The freed wolf pup clung to Raúl while Lena covered their retreat, her snarls a barrier of sound. Elena grabbed the console keys, smashing them in a spray of sparks, the monitors dying with a whine. No more eyes on the pack. "This way, the riverbed exit," she called, memory guiding her to a side passage she'd glimpsed on old maps from her mother's stories. The group funneled after her, the mine's belly groaning as if alive with resentment. Guards poured in, bullets pinging off walls, one catching Lena in the leg. She yelped but kept moving, Raúl supporting her with a brother's fierce tenderness. They burst into a storage alcove, crates of vials and equipment blocking the path. Eleanor kicked one over, glass shattering in a chemical haze that made the pursuing guards cough and falter. Marcus scooped her up, his injured flank warm against her side as he carried her forward. "Smart move, Luna," he murmured, the word a private vow amid the storm. Her cheeks burned, but she focused on the dim light ahead, the back entrance disguised as a collapse. Outside, the dry riverbed welcomed them with blinding dawn sun, the air fresh after the mine's stifling tomb. They collapsed in the shade of the old oak, breaths ragged, wounds pulsing. Maria stirred in Diego's arms, whispering thanks, her herb-scented hands already seeking poultices in her tattered pouch. Thomas clasped Elena's forearm, his scout's eyes clear for the first time. "Oh, you, Omega! Thought we were ghosts." But victory tasted bittersweet. Harlan's words echoed. Network. Reinforcements. From the mine mouth, engines rumbled, trucks approaching, dust clouds rising like omens. Luca bound the worst wounds with strips from his shirt, his sly grin returning faintly. "We hit 'em hard, but she's right. Bigger fish." Raúl and Lena nodded, their alliance forged in blood. "Our clan joins yours now. No more lone howls." Marcus stood, pulling Eleanor to her feet, his hand lingering on her waist. The touch sent sparks through her. The rejected Omega, now the one who turned the tide. "We get back, fortify the ranch, interrogate what we can from the guards we downed. This ends with us." His eyes searched hers, the pack watching, a subtle shift in the air, the fractures mending, loyalty blooming. As they moved out, the desert stretching vast and unforgiving, Sophia's talisman weighed heavy in Elena's pocket beside Maria's scarf. The pup's luck had held, but the rumble grew closer, a promise of more battles. Elena glanced back at the mine, its shadows hiding deeper sins, labs, buyers, a war on their kind. Her answer to Marcus had ignited the fire, but quenching the desert's thirst would demand everything. And in the pack's eyes, she saw it, no longer overlooked, but the Luna rising, ready to howl back. Yet as the first shots cracked from afar, she wondered if the cost would break them before it bound them whole. The shots cracked like whips across the sun-baked riverbed, kicking up puffs of dust that stung Elena's eyes as the group sprinted toward the ranch's distant silhouette. Her lungs burned, the talisman in her pocket bouncing against her thigh with every stride, a reminder of Sophia's innocent faith. Marcus ran beside her, his injured flank seeping blood through his torn shirt, but his pace didn't falter. Alpha resolve etched in every tense muscle. Behind them the mine's mouth spat out pursuers, 4 guards in tactical vests, rifles raised, their truck's engine revving to life in a belch of exhaust. Bullets whizzed past, one splintering the old oak's trunk as they crested a rise. "Split up, flank them!" Marcus bellowed, his voice cutting through the panic like a blade. He veered left with Diego and Thomas, the scout limping but determined, his pilfered knife glinting in the sunlight. Luca grabbed Elena's arm, pulling her right toward a cluster of boulders, while Raúl and Lena, the coyotes, darted ahead with Maria slung between them. The healer was fading fast, her breath shallow, but she clutched a salvaged vial from the crates, antidote perhaps, her fingers trembling as she uncorked it for herself. "Keep moving," she rasped, the words a spark of her old fire. Elena's heart thundered, the desert floor blurring under her feet, cracked earth and thorny scrub that clawed at her legs. This wasn't the quiet life of mending fences, it was raw survival, the pack's fractures tested in fire. Luca's sly grin was gone, replaced by a hunter's focus, his claws partially extended as he scanned for cover. "They're gaining. Trucks faster on the flat. We need to lose them in the washes." He nodded toward a dry gulch snaking parallel to their path, its walls sheer and shadowed by overhanging mesquite. She nodded, mind racing through the terrain her mother had mapped in bedtime tales, hidden veins of the land that could swallow a man whole. "There. The fork splits into two. We take the narrow one. It'll bottleneck them." Her voice held steady, surprising her, the Omega's overlooked knowledge now a weapon. Luca squeezed her arm once, approval in his eyes, before they plunged into the gulch. The walls rose like silent sentinels, muffling the gunfire to echoes, the air cooler and laced with the musty scent of ancient floods. From above, shouts rang out, the guards coordinating, their truck grinding to a halt at the gulch's mouth. Engines growled closer, but the bottleneck worked. Only two dismounted to pursue on foot, boots crunching gravel. Elena and Luca crouched behind a jutting rock, breaths synced in tense rhythm. Maria's group vanished around the bend, Raúl's low barks urging them on. "Your call, Elena," Luca whispered, his beta instincts yielding to her lead for the first time. "Ambush or evade?" Ambush. The word ignited her core, the fire Marcus had named now roaring. She shifted seamlessly this time, the pain a distant echo, her silver form sleek against the ochre stone. Luca followed, his lean wolf body melting into shadow. They waited, ears pricked to the guard's approach. Curses in Spanish about damn animals and the boss's wrath. The first guard rounded the corner, rifle sweeping, his face slick with sweat under a bandana. Elena sprang, a blur of fangs sinking into his leg, dragging him down with a yelp. Luca pounced on the second, claws raking his back before a swift bite to the throat ended the threat. Shifting back, Elena wiped blood from her mouth, the metallic taste grounding her amid the adrenaline crash. Luca bound the survivors with their own belts, stripping weapons, a pistol for her, rifle for him. "Not bad," he said, the sly edge returning faintly. "Alpha's right. You're lunar material. Pax seeing it now." His words warmed her, mending an old wound she'd carried since the rejection, but there was no time to savor. Distant howls signaled Marcus's group engaging the truck, snarls and the crunch of metal, Diego's roar cutting through. They pressed on, emerging from the gulch to find the ranch's fences in sight, smoke rising from the courtyard like a beacon. Javier stood at the gate, shotgun in hand, his squint fierce as he fired warning shots at the horizon. Rosa herded the pups inside, Sophia's face pressed to a window, her small hands waving frantically. The hacienda loomed, its adobe walls a fortress against the encroaching dawn, Bougainvillea wilting under the heat as if sensing the storm. Marcus's group staggered in first, the truck a smoking wreck behind them, tires shredded, cab crumpled from wolf assault. Diego dragged a dazed guard, while Thomas leaned on Marcus, the Alpha's arm around his waist like a brother's. Blood streaked Marcus's face, but his eyes lit when he saw Eleanor, relief raw and unguarded. "You made it, all of you." He pulled her into a quick embrace, his scent sage and storm enveloping her, the touch electric against her skin. Maria collapsed into Rosa's arms at the gate, the healer murmuring weakly about the antidote's effects, her color returning in faint blooms. Raoul and Lena shifted fully human, collapsing against the fence, their scars a map of shared loss. The network. "It's cartel-backed," Tomas gasped, as Luca helped him inside. "Harlan's just the tip. Labs in the city, buyers international. They want our blood for enhancements, weapons." The courtyard filled with the pack's weary forms, enforcers binding the captured guards alongside Paco and young Tomas from the night before. Javier passed canteens, his gruff voice steadying the chaos. "Water first, then talk. Desert don't care for heroes without sense." Sofia darted out, throwing herself at Elena's legs, the talisman now a shared secret in her hug. "You came back, like the stories." Marcus gathered them under the hacienda's porch, the sun climbing higher, casting long shadows that mirrored the threats ahead. "We saved who we could, but Harlan's words ring true. This is war. The disappearances were scouting, testing our edges. No more reacting. We strike back." His gaze swept the group, landing on Elena with weighted promise. "And we do it united. Elena's proven it, her sight, her fight. She's the Luna we need, binding us against what's coming." Murmurs rippled, approval from Diego's nod, Luca's subtle smile, even Raoul's quiet, "See, she leads true." Elena's throat tightened, the rejection's ghost fading in the light of their trust. But as a distant helicopter thrummed overhead, scouts, perhaps, or worse, the weight settled. The desert's hunger wasn't sated. It demanded more. She stepped forward, hand finding Marcus's, their fingers lacing in silent vow. Together, then, for the lost and the living. Yet, as plans formed, alliances with coyote clans, raids on city labs, the chopper's shadow passed, engines fading but not gone. Elena felt the pull, her wolf howling inwardly for the battles ahead. The pack was whole again, fractures sealed in blood, but the real harvest loomed, and her rising meant facing the darkness head-on. In Marcus's eyes, she saw their future, fierce, unbreakable, but the wind whispered warnings and dawn's promise carried teeth. The helicopter's thrum faded into the vast blue above, leaving only the desert wind to sigh through the hacienda's courtyard, like a reluctant truce. Elena stood beside Marcus, their hands still linked, her pulse syncing with his in a rhythm that felt ancient, inevitable. The pack encircled them under the porch's shade, faces etched with exhaustion and resolve, Maria propped against Rosa, the healer's eyes clearer now, sipping from a tin cup of Javier's strong coffee. Tomas leaning on a fence post, his scout's gaze already scanning the horizon. Diego wiping sweat from his brow, the fresh bandage on his shoulder a badge of the night's toll. Luca lounged against a pillar, his sly grin tempered by the weight of what they'd unearthed, while Raoul and Lena sat cross-legged with the other enforcers, their coyote scents mingling with the pack's pine and musk, forging an uneasy but unbreakable alliance. Javier broke the silence first, shuffling forward with a tray of fresh tortillas wrapped around beans and cheese, his limp a testament to the miles he'd covered in spirit, if not in body. "Eat, all of you. Battles on empty bellies are for fools and ghosts." His voice was gravelly, laced with the wisdom of a man who'd buried too many under these hills. But his eyes twinkled at Elena, a quiet pride in the way he handed her the largest portion. "You led 'em true, Chica, like your ma would have." Elena accepted the food, the warmth seeping through the cloth to her fingers, grounding her amid the swirl of emotions. The rejection from years ago felt like a faded scar now, overshadowed by the pack's nods and murmurs of agreement. Sofia tugged at her skirt, wide eyes shining. "Did you really bite the bad men, like in the stories?" Elena knelt, ruffling the girl's hair, The talisman necklace, now around Sophia's neck, a shared charm. We all did, little one. But the stories end with everyone safe. That's what we're writing now. Marcus squeezed her hand, drawing her up, his obsidian eyes holding hers with a depth that spoke volumes beyond words. The alpha in him commanded the space, but the man beneath sought her strength, her fire. The network Harlan mentioned, it's not just labs and buyers, Thomas. You saw the maps in that console before Elena smashed it. Talk. Thomas straightened, wincing but steady, his voice gaining strength as he traced invisible lines in the dust with a stick. Routes from the mine snake north to Nogales, then east to a warehouse in Hermosillo. Cartel ties, sure. Paco confirmed it under Luca's persuasion. But the American angle? Harlan's notes mentioned a buyer in Tucson, some PharmaCorp testing shifter blood for anti-aging serums, or worse, soldier enhancements. They vanished our own to breed fear, to weaken us before the harvest. Murmurs rippled through the group, low growls underscoring the betrayal. Maria stirred, her gentle hands clenching. The drugs they used, suppressants, mutagens. I felt it in my veins, twisting the shift until it hurt to breathe. But the antidote works. We can brew more from what I salvaged. No more victims if we hit their supply lines first. Diego cracked his knuckles, his tattooed arms flexing. Then we raid the warehouse, take the fight to them, no more waiting for shadows. His hot temper had cooled into focused rage, respect for Elena evident in the way he deferred to Marcus's nod toward her. Elena felt the pull, the Luna's instinct Marcus had named, blooming fully now. The overlooked Omega had become the thread weaving them together, her quiet observations turning the tide. But doubt flickered. The cost. More blood, more fractures. She glanced at the hacienda's garden, bougainvillea petals scattered like fallen stars, a reminder of fragile beauty amid the thorns. We can't charge blind, she said, her voice carrying to every ear. Allies first. Raul, Lena, your clan, and the northern packs we've traded with. Unity, not just survival. Raul nodded, his scarred chest rising with a deep breath. Word spreads fast among the wild ones. We'll call the howl, coyotes, wolves, even the lone rogues, for the lost. Lena's lopsided smile was fierce, her hand on her brother's shoulder. And you, Elena, you lead the scout on the warehouse. Your eyes see what alphas miss. Marcus's thumb traced circles on her palm, a private reassurance amid the planning. The sun climbed higher, baking the earth, but the pack's energy built like a gathering storm. Luca sketched routes on a scrap of paper, Javier fetching maps from the attic, yellowed relics from his stable hand days. Rosa emerged with poultices and ammunition, her laugh lines deepening as she joked about turning the kitchen into an armory. Sophia darted among them, carrying messages like a tiny enforcer, her giggles a balm against the grim resolve. As midday heat shimmered the air, Marcus pulled Elena aside to the garden's edge, the stone fountains trickle a soft counterpoint to the courtyard's hum. You changed everything, he murmured, his free hand cupping her cheek, calluses rough from rains and battles. From that moon festival, when I was blind to your strength, I was a fool. But now, the pack needs you as Luna, Elena. Not out of desperation, but because you're the heart we've been missing. Her breath caught, the sage of his scent wrapping around her like home. The rejections, the invisibility, they dissolved in his gaze, replaced by a promise forged in fire. And you? The alpha who sees me now. She leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that tasted of dust and destiny, brief but electric, sealing what words couldn't. The pack's distant voices faded, just them and the wind whispering approval. They rejoined the group as plans solidified. A dawn raid on the warehouse, scouts dispatched to rally allies, the hacienda fortified with traps and watchers. The captured guards, broken and bound in the root cellar, spilled more. Roots, codes, the network's weak points. Harlan, dragged out, drugged and defiant, faced Marcus's interrogation, her sneers crumbling under the Pack's united front. "You'll fall," she hissed, but Elena met her eyes, unyielding. Not today, and not alone. By evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the hills in fiery oranges, the first howls answered from the north, coyote calls blending with wolf songs, a chorus of solidarity. Elena stood on the porch with Marcus, Sophia at her side, the talisman glinting. Maria's poultices worked their magic, wounds healing under her care. Thomas scouted the borders anew, his steps sure. Javier strummed an old guitar by the fire pit, tales of victory weaving through the night, binding old grudges into new loyalties. The desert's hunger lingered, its secrets vast, but the Pack was whole. Fractures mended, fire kindled. Elena's answer had ignited it all, from rejected Omega to Luna rising, changing the shadows into strength. As stars wheeled overhead, Marcus's arm around her waist, she felt the moon's pull, gentle now, a call to lead. The war wasn't over, but together they'd face it, teeth bared, hearts entwined, and in the quiet after the storm, possibility bloomed, fierce and free.